Welcome. It is Verdict with Senator Ted Cruz, Ben Ferguson with you, and it's nice to have you with us around the country. We've got a lot to talk about, including the latest on Operation Epic Fury. This regime is being really just decapitated in Iran, Senator, and this is good news when it comes to national security.
Well, that's exactly right. We're seeing extraordinary results in terms of the military conflict with Iran and the efficacy with which this attack is removing the regime's ability to launch missiles, to launch drones. Let me give you the numbers because the numbers are really striking. So on day one of this conflict, Iran launched 350 missiles, ballistic missiles. On day two, it dropped to 175. On day three, it dropped to 120. On day four, it dropped to 50. On day five, it dropped to 40. On day six, it dropped to 32. On day seven, it dropped to 28. And on day eight, it dropped all the way down to 15. So they went from 350 ballistic missiles launched a day to just 15 launched a day. How about drone swarms? Same pattern. Day one, 294. Day two, 541, so they surged on day two. Day three, 200. Day four, 85. Day five, 45. Day six, 38. Day seven, 30. And day eight, 12. So what that means is that our forces have systematically taken out, number one, their air defenses. Number two, we've taken out their missile launch sites and their drone launch sites. Most of their missile launch sites are mobile, so what happens is when they launch from a mobile missile launcher, we lock onto it and take that launcher out. And we've done that systemically. Now, early on, we were using smart bombs and guided missiles. That's very expensive munitions, and you saw in the first few days of this conflict a lot written saying that the rate at which we're using munitions is not sustainable. Well, the plan was never to use smart munitions for the entire duration of the conflict. Rather, the plan was to use it to take out both their defensive capacity and their offensive capacity. We've done that now. Now, with having achieved air superiority, we're able to use gravity bombs. We're able to use munitions, which we have vast quantities of and which are much, much less expensive. In other words, President Trump and the military has achieved total air dominance, has all but eliminated their ability to launch ballistic missiles and drones, and meanwhile has achieved naval dominance as well, taking out most of the ships in their navy. That level of control has put us in a position where we're seeing extraordinary success.
Love, generosity, and compassion. We say those words all the time, and they sound good. They feel good. But here's the truth. Those words don't mean anything unless they turn into action. And right now, not later today, not tomorrow, there's a child in the world who doesn't know if they'll eat, if they'll have a chance to learn, or if there's any hope at all. And while we're all busy, life keeps moving forward, but that child is waiting. This is where you come in. With Compassion International, you have the chance to change a child's future. Not just with words, not with promises, but with real help that provides food, education, and hope through local churches and people already in their community. Put your words into action and join me. Introduce a child to a loving Heavenly Father today at compassion.com. That's compassion.com.
You talk about this extraordinary success, and it's something that I think so many Americans have been concerned over what this means at home. You look at gas prices, for example, and let's talk about that for a moment. The president has said, and many that are analysts, military analysts say, look, if this is a short-term thing, this is going to be a short-term pain, and what you gain is massive compared to that in the future, because this is how much Iran could hold the world hostage. Look at this, what has happened here recently, and these prices have obviously jumped significantly. The president has made it clear he thinks this is going to be a short-term event, and we're not invading. We are going after regime change, and then things will go back to normal. 20% of the oil world supply goes through the Strait of Hormuz. That's another part of this and the calculation here. So break that down a little bit so people understand.
Yeah, I think that's right. We have seen an energy spike, and anytime there's a conflict in the Middle East, you typically see oil prices spike and gasoline prices spike. My expectation is that will be a short-term spike. I don't expect this conflict to last more than a couple of weeks, and I think you'll see gasoline prices drop back down. And I will note President Trump has a lot of credibility on this. When he came in, we were seeing gasoline prices across the country, in some places $6-7 a gallon, and those prices have dropped all but in half. In Texas, you could routinely buy a gallon of gas for between $2 and $3 a gallon, and so that has been very effective. I also want to make a broader point about analyzing the energy component of what's going on. And there was a Twitter thread by this analyst named Guy Larin, who is not a fan of Trump's, but I think actually his analysis of the energy policy in the Middle East was very insightful, so I want to share it with you. So he asks, is Trump planning to Venezuelize Iran? This analysis deviates from the mainstream media portrayal of a fickle, senile, or Bibi-led president. It assumes Trump is evil but rational, a thread. Now, I don't agree with the evil characterization there, but the rest of this analysis is quite insightful. So he continues, what is Kharg Island and why does it matter? A tiny strip of land, half the size of Manhattan, nestled in the northern Persian Gulf, 1 hour by boat from the Iranian shore. Gazelles roam next to oil terminals through which Iran exports 90% of its crude. Iran's pre-war signal. Before the war, as American forces massed across the region, Iran did something revealing. It ramped up Kharg exports from 1.5 million barrels of oil a day to 4 million, near record levels. That means that the Iranians read Trump differently than the Western media does. They don't think he's after regime change or democracy. They think he's after oil. They might be right. NBC reported that Trump outlined to his aides his vision for a post-war Iran. Quote, a new Iranian regime cooperates on oil production similar to how the U.S. and Venezuela are. The Venezuela template, out of Trump's own mouth. AEI's Michael Rubin, a former advisor to the George W. Bush administration, who is in direct contact with the Trump advisors, is pushing the same logic. Referring to the Revolutionary Guards, he says, quote, if they can't sell their own oil, they can't make payroll. Meaning that if the U.S. seizes Kharg, it doesn't need regime change. It directly controls Iran's most important source of income. Everything the U.S. and Israel has done so far fits this strategy. First, quote, decapitate and delegate. That was Israel's role. Khamenei killed. The Iranian leadership is in disarray. Now, to whom do you delegate? The answer isn't clear yet. So the U.S. is reportedly encouraging Kurdish rebellion in the north of the country, forcing Iran to send forces upwards and thin out their defenses in the south, where Kharg is. Meanwhile, the U.S. has systematically destroyed the Iranian Navy, operations reaching as far as Sri Lanka, where an Iranian warship was intercepted. Southern Iran is being pummeled. These aren't random. They are clearing the operational space for a naval seizure of Kharg. Ian Bremmer captures the military logic precisely. The Kharg Island isn't extensively fortified and sits isolated enough that the U.S. destroyers could establish a credible defensive perimeter well offshore. The U.S. is also preparing to escort tanker convoys through the Strait of Hormuz and seeking financial mechanisms to insure ships after Lloyd's pulled out. These services aren't free. In practice, the U.S. would control the straits, the jugular of global energy trade. China can't respond militarily. It prepared its navy to defend the Strait of Malacca, its other vulnerability. Approximately 80% of China's imported crude oil and nearly two-thirds of its total maritime trade pass through the Strait of Malacca. Having the U.S. control the Persian Gulf, from which China imports roughly half its crude and a third of its gas, is a strategic catastrophe for Beijing. The alternative? Deeper dependence on Russian energy, practically natural gas from Siberia, which is exactly what Beijing loathes. It does not want to be dependent on the transactional Putin. Step back. Greenland, Panama, Venezuela, now the Persian Gulf. Trump isn't leading the world through alliances and institutions. He's seizing nodes, the choke points, and resource pools that make the world and AI run. Whether it works or not, This is a coherent imperial strategy. Now, I got to say, I don't agree with every word of that, but that is very insightful analysis and helps you understand why the American success in Iran is critically important to our safety, and the principal reason for going in is to keep Americans safe from Iranian terrorism and aggression, but it is also a very, very powerful China play enhancing U.S. economic security and national security.
You know, one of the things you mentioned there is what Americans worry about, and you go back to just some of the headlines that we're seeing right now. One of them out of New York, there was an arrest made after a homemade explosive caused terror scare in New York City. This device that was hurled at Gracie, I mean, it's a protest determined to be highly dangerous IED capable of serious injury or death. People see this and are like, well, maybe, and again, I think it's important that we deal with this. They say, well, this is why maybe we shouldn't have gone after Iran. I think that's flawed logic to think that way. These threats are threats whether we got there or not, and they're like, I don't think there's a direct cause and effect. I think there are bad people in the world that want to commit heinous crimes, and their timing may change because of what we did in Iran. But if you're a terrorist in this country that got in this country through the open borders or however you got in here, and you're planning something or trying to do something, I think it's in your DNA based on your beliefs. You're going to do it no matter what.
Well, and look, this vulnerability is here because for 4 years, Joe Biden and the Democrats opened up our borders and basically invited radical Islamic terrorists to come to this country. If you look what happened in New York, you had Islamists throwing dangerous IEDs capable of serious injury or death. And you know, ask yourself, in the reporting on this, have you seen a single news report mention that the jihadists who threw the nail bomb into a crowd in New York City repeatedly shouted Allahu Akbar? I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that on CNN. I haven't seen that on MSNBC or the New York Times. They don't want to cover that. And to be clear, we saw the same thing in Austin a week ago when the terrorists there wearing a sweatshirt that said property of Allah, wearing a T-shirt with an Iranian flag, attacked a bar on 6th Street in Austin. And again, this is the terrorism, the vulnerability that President Trump is acting to protect against. But I got to tell you, in the midst of this, look, we have an enhanced risk for terrorism right now. It is obvious. Jihadist clerics have put out a fatwa calling on terrorists to try to kill Americans. And in the middle of this, do you know what we did this week? We voted again to fund the Department of Homeland Security, and every Democrat except John Fetterman said, no, we will not fund DHS, the department literally created to defend us against terrorist attacks.
You mentioned that, and let's go into that a little bit more. This is all about politics, and it shouldn't be, because this is about a national security issue. And I think it's important that we take a moment and explain exactly why Democrats have wanted to keep this shutdown going. This is a partial government shutdown. It's something they're obsessed with DHS. They don't like it. They don't like law and order. They don't like ICE agents, and they're putting our lives at risk, and they don't really seem to care that that's what they're doing.
They don't, and understand it's all empty politics appealing to their radical base. So the Democrats have decided they hate ICE. They are the party of illegal immigrants, and they are opposed to ICE. They are opposed to law enforcement. They are opposed to police. Now, their DHS shutdown, do you know how many ICE agents are not being paid because of it?
How many?
0. They are not defunding ICE. They are failing miserably in any effort to defund ICE. Why? Because last year when we passed the Working Families Tax Cut, the big reconciliation bill, we funded ICE. We knew the Democrats would play stupid games with it, so we said, fine, we'll provide the funding for ICE. So ICE agents are being paid. The DHS shutdown is not cutting off even a penny for ICE. The people they are cutting off, they're cutting off the Coast Guard, they're cutting off FEMA, they're cutting off TSA. Look, if you're flying a plane, you can expect delays to begin getting longer and longer and longer, because those TSA agents that have to check you in, right now they're showing up at work and they are not being paid. I just got off a plane yesterday. Thank the TSA agents who were there, and they appreciated that, but they said, you know, boy, it'd be nice to get paid. And I agreed. I said it is utter BS. I'm sorry about that. You should be paid. And I just apologized to them, although, to be clear, I'm voting to fund them. But the Democrats are trying to ratchet up and inflict pain. And they believe the media won't blame them. When your flights are delayed, they believe the media won't blame them. When Coast Guardsmen, young men and women serving in the Coast Guard don't have the money to pay their rent, don't have the money to pay their mortgage, they believe the media won't blame them. When FEMA, the people in charge of responding to disasters, are not being paid and it slows down federal disaster response, the Democrats believe the media will not blame them. So this is entirely an effort to say screw you to ICE by not cutting out ICE funding, because they can't do that because Republicans already paid for ICE, but instead cutting off the funding for the rest of DHS that exists principally to stop terrorist attacks. So they're telling you, I, Chuck Schumer, I, Democrat, hate ICE and hate law enforcement so much that I'm going to increase the chance of a terrorist attack in your community just to tell the crazies in my party how much I hate ICE.
I want to go back to something else that we also are seeing, and it's not just these domestic terrorist attacks here that may be inspired by what's happening, but we're also now seeing this happen around the country. Police or the world, I should say. Police are investigating an explosion outside the U.S. Embassy, for example, in Norway. What can you tell us about that and the concern that people have all over the world now for with the reactions happening from these Muslim extremists?
Well, Islamists are taking this time to engage in acts of violence and acts of terrorism, and we could expect to see more of this. Now, understand, many of these Islamists have been funded by Iran for years, and so they see their money stream, their money spigot being cut off, but we need full capacity to protect ourselves at a time that is dangerous. I believe what the Democrats are doing is reckless, and I pray that it does not lead to it. But the Democrats' action cutting off the funding for DHS could very well cause more terrorist attack, including potentially a catastrophic terrorist attack. And I'm not aware of any of the Democrats who is expressing any concern about this or is willing to do anything about it. Look, they might leave DHS shut down, leave these people not paid for the rest of the year. They are radical enough to do this. And the media is complicit in it, and it's the reason President Trump is trying to resolve this conflict with Iran quickly. And what President Trump has called for is unconditional surrender, that he wants Iran to surrender, and he is systematically taking out first their air defenses, then their missile launch capacity, then their drone launch capacity, then their missile manufacturing capacity, then their drone manufacturing capacity, then their military infrastructure, their leadership. And at this point, he is systematically degrading their ability to fight back day after day after day. He is exactly right to say this ends when the Iranian regime says we surrender. And when they surrender, the result is going to be that the theocratic despots who chant death to America, who pay for terrorists to murder Americans, who pay for hitmen to try to murder President Trump, they are out of power. We are not going to allow that country to be led by lunatics who are spending millions of dollars trying to murder Americans. That's what victory looks like. I believe that's where we will end up. But I will say at the same time, we are seeing people spread propaganda, and we're seeing two groups that are spreading the same propaganda. Let's start with Democrats. Let's start in particular with Chris Murphy. I want you to listen to what Chris Murphy has said. Give a listen.
Mullahs in Iran, this is, again, Rubio's characterization, are madmen, and they believe in holy war, and they believe in killing the crusaders of the United States and the Jews of Israel. And there is a special degree of unacceptability for them having a nuclear weapon.
So, I don't disagree, but what I disagree with is that an aerial military campaign or even the insertion of ground forces can permanently dislodge Iran from having a nuclear weapon. Again, you were talking about knowledge. That can't be bombed out of existence.
So how do you stop it?
A diplomatic agreement. We had a diplomatic agreement. Barack Obama negotiated an agreement in which Iran was more than a year away from getting a weapon. We had daily inspections, scouring the country. It was working. Donald Trump's advisors told him it was working. He threw that agreement into the trash, which precipitated the crisis that we are in today. This is a place where diplomacy probably is the only true path to make sure that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon.
All right, let me ask you this, Senator. He says it was working. That is a flat-out lie, and I think most people that have been following this would know that. He's acting like they just decided to go rogue, referring to the Trump administration, just get into a war for no reason at all.
So what you just heard from Senator Chris Murphy is utterly fact-free propaganda. He's just repeating left-wing talking points. Now, look, Chris Murphy wants to run for president as a left-wing Democrat, as a successor to Bernie Sanders in terms of a rabid socialist isolationist. And so facts are not going to get in the way. One of the things he said there, we were having daily nuclear weapons inspections. That is a lie. Under the terms of the Obama nuclear deal, number one, there were multiple areas that were off limits from inspection. What areas were off limit from inspection? Well, one of them was Fordo, the military site under a mountain where they were doing their nuclear weapons development. By the way, Donald Trump dropped bunker buster bombs on Fordo and took it out and destroyed it. But under the Obama nuclear deal, nobody could inspect Fordo. And even when we wanted to inspect other areas of research, we had to call the Iranians and get their permission, and they would inspect it for us. You know, I've sort of joked that's like calling up a drug dealer. Can you imagine, like the classic movie Scarface? The scenario that Obama negotiated is basically that the DEA would call Tony Montana, the drug dealer in Scarface, and go, "Hey, Tony, would you check your warehouse and tell us if there are any drugs there?" And Tony would go, yeah, man, hold on, let me look. No drugs there. We're clean." That is the Obama nuclear deal. It was literally Obama calling up the Ayatollah. "Hey, you got any nukes?" "No, man, we're good. We don't have any nukes. No nukes here at all." "All right, thanks." That's the idiocy of the Democrats. They knew, and by the way, the Obama-Iran nuclear deal sunset in 15 years. So after 15 years, Obama said, "We're fine with your having nukes." Chris Murphy and the Democrats know that. They don't care. That deal was designed to allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon. I'll tell you, when President Trump in the first term pulled out of the Obama-Iran nuclear deal, it was exactly the right decision. I had urged him to do so. And it set the stage. Iran is now, particularly after President Trump last year bombed the nuclear weapons facility, Iran's nuclear program is way, way, way back. And yet they remain dangerous and they remain absolutely committed to developing nuclear weapons. Now, the Democrats and the press are trying to undermine President Trump. They're trying to undermine the U.S. military, and they're trying to bolster Iran and the Ayatollahs. Do you know who else is doing that?
Who else?
Tucker Carlson and the rest of the so-called woke right. There's a group of isolationist folks on the right. It is a small group, but they are loud and vocal. And Tucker Carlson has now all but declared war on President Trump's foreign policy. I want you to listen to Tucker Carlson in his latest show. I'm going to warn you, what he says here is shocking, and it is to the left of Chris Murphy. So it is more anti-Donald Trump than Chris Murphy and the Democrats. Listen to Tucker Carlson.
Unconditional surrender means foreign troops get to rape your wife and daughter if they want. And everyone knows that. And that has been, if there's one consistent lesson of history, it means unconditional surrender means foreign troops get to rape your wife and daughter. Everyone can feel that. That's like the most atavistic instinct there is. And so to avoid that, people will do anything. And so that's why it requires that level of force to get a population subdued to the point of unconditional surrender. That's why. And so in this case, of course, we don't have the ground force necessary. I don't think Americans would voluntarily participate in it. I just don't think we can do that. It would require weapons of mass destruction. It would require presumably nuclear weapons in order to do that. And let's not lie to ourselves. We're moving toward that.
You hear Tucker there, and I mean, you want to talk about unhinged. That is like some of the most anti-American propaganda I've ever seen spewed by someone like Tucker Carlson. It is a new low even for him, and the bar keeps dropping day after day.
Look, the words someone like Tucker Carlson, you don't even have to put that constraint. That is more anti-American rhetoric than anything I've ever heard Bernie Sanders say, or even Chris Murphy. What he said there, listen, Tucker continues to go to new lows and new lows. And part of it is President Trump this week said that Tucker Carlson is, quote, not MAGA and not smart. The more Tucker Carlson attacks Donald Trump, the more fringe he gets. And so I think this was Tucker acting out when Trump said what was obviously true. But Tucker just said, go back, rewind and listen to what he just said. He said, number one, if Iran surrenders, that American soldiers are going to rape their wives and daughters. And in fact, he said it twice. What utter and complete garbage, you America-hating Islamist fluffer. I got to say, that makes me mad. I think of the servicemen and women, but the men in particular who are risking their lives, and Tucker Carlson standing there saying, if you surrender to America, American soldiers are going to rape your women. We have never done that. That is not something America does. No, Tucker. American soldiers are not going to rape Iranian women. You know who rapes the people they conquer? Iranians do. Islamists do. That is, in fact, part of what they do. Part of what they do is that they rape women as a means of subjugation. But Tucker's not going to tell you that, because Tucker is now one of the leading proponents of Sharia law in the United States. He's literally an apologist for Islamists. And so now you might say, wow, that statement seems incredible. It seems extreme. Here are a couple of data points. Number one, during this war, the Iranian national television is playing Tucker Carlson's show in Iran. They view that as such valuable propaganda, they want the Iranian people to hear Tucker. Number two, the Muslim Brotherhood. By the way, Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine, and they are terrorists, are tweeting out Tucker Carlson's show. The Muslim Brotherhood is saying, this is our spokesman. Man, this guy is good. I cannot recall another major political figure on left or right who has said, if you surrender to America, American soldiers will rape your women. That's what Tucker Carlson just said. That is grotesque. And by the way, any soldier who sees Tucker Carlson ought to say, how dare you say that, American soldiers? No, we would not, and impugning our troops is disgusting. And the second thing that Tucker said in that clip is that Donald Trump is moving towards using a nuclear weapon in Iran. No, he's not, Tucker. That is a complete and utter lie. That is false. We are not going to nuke Iran. It is only deranged. That's the sort of thing the Ayatollah would say. And you've got to ask yourself, look, some of you may think back to when Tucker was on Fox News, and he was actually said a lot of things you and I loved that made a lot of sense. This guy today is just a kook. And even worse than that, he is the most prominent purveyor of Islamist lies about America and about Donald Trump. Tucker Carlson has gone full out to war with Donald Trump's national security and foreign policy, and it is, he and Chris Murphy are now, they are comrades in arms. He and Tucker Carlson and Chris Murphy and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and Ilhan Omar and AOC, they all have the exact same foreign policy, and it is anti-American, and it is pro-Islamist, and it's dangerous as hell.
Having just come back from Israel, I want to paint you a picture. It's midnight, sirens are blaring, and you have only seconds to grab your child and run. Now imagine you're elderly. Your legs don't work like they used to. Getting downstairs feels impossible. And after all of that, you end up in a bomb shelter for hours, even days, because you can't make the trek again. This is what's happening across Israel as Operation Epic Fury continues. Children are being traumatized. Families are just exhausted. And homes have been destroyed. And that's why the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is there, on the ground, bringing food, emergency equipment, care for those children, and help for the elderly, and supplying the bomb shelters and medical centers for critically needed essentials. If you've ever wondered what it looks like to stand for Israel and stand for good against evil, this is it. And that's why I'm asking you to now please act. Give $45 right now to rush life-saving essentials to the vulnerables under fire. You can also call 888-488-IFCJ. That's 888-488-IFCJ. Join me and give and make a real difference. Online at ifcj.org. That's ifcj.org.
We've got some breaking news as we are recording this on Sunday. They have now named a new leader in Iran. It is the son of the former leader there. That is someone that the president has said is unacceptable. Your reaction to that as well?
Well, look, it's not surprising. The mullahs are going to get together and they're going to want another mullah to be the Ayatollah. And they want the country to continue to be run by Islamist clerics who embrace a death cult. And it's interesting. One of the things, I'm going back to Chris Murphy and what he said a minute ago. We rely on deterrence to stop the most egregious acts of harm. Deterrence works with many countries because you have rational actors. Let's take, for example, North Korea. So North Korea is an exceptionally dangerous part of the world. Why does North Korea have nukes? Well, it goes back to a previous Democrat president, Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton sent a State Department employee named Wendy Sherman to negotiate a nuclear agreement with Kim Jong-il, who was the father of the current dictator Kim Jong-un. And the deal they cut is that Bill Clinton agreed to send billions of dollars to North Korea, and in exchange for that money, North Korea would promise not to develop nuclear weapons. Well, what happened? We now know what happened. They took the billions of dollars. They used it to develop nuclear weapons, and today North Korea has nuclear weapons. So it was a spectacular failure. Fast forward to Barack Obama. Barack Obama comes into office, and he decides his signature foreign policy move is he wants to negotiate an agreement with Iran on nuclear weapons. So what does he do? He actually goes and recruits the same damn person, Wendy Sherman, to negotiate his Iran deal. Literally, there are 8 billion people on planet Earth, Ben. There is one out of 8 billion who has screwed this up previously, has negotiated a deal to send billions of dollars to a foreign dictator, and it's resulted in that dictator using the billions of dollars to develop nuclear weapons. That would be Wendy Sherman. That's who Obama brought in and said, hey, can you do the same for us? Now, we live with the failures of the Clinton administration and Wendy Sherman with North Korea. And Kim Jong-un is a dictator. He's megalomaniacal. He's dangerous as hell. He is testing ICBMs. He is explicitly target U.S. citizens, including Austin, Texas. Is a city that he has said he's targeted before. However, our best protection is Kim Jong-un knows if he ever used a nuclear weapon, the result would be massive, overwhelming retaliation, and his regime would lose power that day. It would be the end of his life if he did that. As dangerous as Kim Jong-un is, at least there's some possibility of rational self-deterrence. Here's what makes Iran orders of magnitude more dangerous. When you're dealing with religious extremism, when you're dealing with theocratic zealots who are in a death cult, who glorify death and suicide, rational deterrence doesn't work the same way. So, for example, if the Ayatollah detonated a nuclear weapon, say in Tel Aviv or in New York or Los Angeles, and let me be clear, I believe if the Ayatollah could do so, he would have done so already. The response would be overwhelming and devastating, but the problem is when you celebrate death and suicide, that normal cost-benefit analysis does not apply. And so, yes, they've named a new Ayatollah. The Ayatollah is what? The son of the old Ayatollah. Okay, great. That is not acceptable because President Trump has rightly made the decision. We're not going to allow U.S. national security to be vulnerable to religious zealots who are funding terrorism, who are the number one funders of terrorism worldwide and have been for 47 years. So Ayatollah number one, Skippy Jr., is not going to get to take over either because allowing Iran to wage war and to murder Americans is not consistent with U.S. national security.
This year marks a critical moment for our country. As the opposition grows more aggressive and unapologetic, the fight now reaches into the everyday decisions we make. Patriot Mobile has been standing on the front lines fighting for freedom for more than 12 years. They don't just deliver top-tier wireless service. They are activists like me who truly care about our country. Patriot Mobile offers prioritized premium access on all 3 major U.S. networks, giving you the same or better coverage than the main carriers do. That means fast speeds and dependable nationwide coverage, backed by 100% U.S.-based customer support. They also offer unlimited data plans, mobile hotspots, international roaming, and more. With simple, seamless activation, you can switch in minutes. You can keep your same number and keep your phone or upgrade. And here's the difference. When you switch to Patriot Mobile, you'll be part of a powerful stream of giving that directly funds the Christian conservative movement. So that's why I want you to switch to Patriot Mobile, because every time you pay that bill, you're making a real difference. Now, I also want to give you a free month of service. Go to patriotmobile.com/verdict. That's patriotmobile.com/verdict. Or call them 972-PATRIOT. That's 972-PATRIOT for a free month of service. Switch today, make a difference. patriotmobile.com/verdict or 972-PATRIOT and get a free month of service with a promo code verdict.
I want to get real quick to one other thing. You talked earlier about DHS funding, and let's get to just some of the concerns that people are having. You had a mid-air panic as Southwest flight was diverted to Atlanta due to security threat amid Iranian terror fears there. You also had a Fort Lauderdale-bound flight diverts with security scared. The passengers removed. These are real stories that are happening that people are concerned about. And so my question is, how quickly can we get the Democrats to understand that this funding is important? We've seen even at Hobby Airport, where you and I fly out of a lot, 3.5 hour security lines. That is unacceptable for the American people.
Well, the only reason they will flip is if the political pain becomes real to them. I think the Democrats are listening to their zealots, to the people who want open borders, who want ICE abolished, who want the police abolished, who are cheering on when the Democrats defend criminals and illegal aliens and gangbangers. Look, go back to the State of the Union address. It was powerful when President Trump turned to the Democrats and said, I'll give you an opportunity to decide right now, where do you stand? Stand with me now. If you agree, our principal responsibility is to defend American citizens and not illegal aliens. 0 Democrats, 0, stood and applauded. They all remained seated. That is where their base is, and right now, the media is not holding them to account. During the Schumer shutdown last year, that Chuck Schumer and the Democrats forced the longest shutdown in American history, right before the elections last year, one Democrat aide told a reporter, said, we're going to keep this shut down, quote, until airplanes start falling from the sky. They feel immune from political consequences. That will only change when they start to feel meaningful political heat. That means the folks listening to this podcast, use your voice, speak out, make phone calls, call Senate offices, post on social media, get other people, write op-eds, speak about it, and hold Democrats to account. They are endangering all of our families by cutting off the funding needed to fight terrorism at a time when the risks of terrorism are unacceptably high. We need to do a better job protecting the homeland, and the Democrats are being reckless at a level I've never seen.
Yeah, it really is incredible. Don't forget, we keep you updated on all these issues, so hit that subscribe or auto-download button wherever you get your podcasts. Share this podcast on social media and write us a 5-star review if you wouldn't mind, and the Senator and I will see you back here in a couple of days.